Mothman and UFOs, and what the meaning of all these things are that we're starting to see come to light. People are starting to talk about these things a lot, and our federal government's starting to recognize that they do exist, even though they knew that they existed for many, many, many years. But I am who I am. I'm just an old Kentucky boy, an old country boy, that God has given the opportunity to meet such wonderful people like you two, and to share so many things in common with you, and to be able to come on your wonderful program and to share with you some of the things that I've seen and heard and have experienced. And I just want to say I thank you for another opportunity to be back with the both of you.
Absolutely. Oh, we're very glad you came back, and you were a very interesting guest last time, and of course we have similar backgrounds. My father was a Methodist minister and in Alabama, and I had lots of experiences with another really deeply faithful person, Chris Bledsoe. And it's just been an interesting life since I met him and then met her. And then here we are. And right now she's, you gotta look in the middle of the night, almost every night. There's another video with another weird thing on it near our home. So it's just nonstop every day. And yes, thank you. All right, what do you got?
Really quick, I just want to jump in this real quick. You brought up Chris, but he showed me something yesterday that reminded me of what Chris finds, and I thought maybe we could jump into that really quick. It was so cool.
Well, I have them set up. So
is that okay?
Yeah. Look at this footprint. Tell us about this footprint.
That footprint, as you can see, it looks like a wet footprint on a tile floor. My Uncle Billy and I were working at a building one night. It's actually a Masonic lodge, and he and I were down there doing some work. And I was upstairs, and he was on the second floor, and he screamed my name. He said, "Josh, get down here." When I came down the stairs, he was as white as a ghost. And I said, "What's wrong with you, Uncle Billy?" He said, "Come down here and look." And all over the floor was these footprints. They looked like wet footprints, but they were dry. Those are the footprints of what appears to be a little child. I would say a little girl, probably no older than 5. And they look larger in the picture, but these were footprints that were wet, but they were dry. They were all over this floor, all over this tile floor. Excuse me. And also, there was footprints, shoe prints around these footprints as well that kind of look like something from the 1930s. This building was built in 1932, so it's fairly old. And this building has been known for paranormal activity. You'll be in one room and it'll sound like someone's ripping the main room apart. You'll go upstairs and there's nobody there. Many times we've seen what we call the old hag. She hangs out down there. She goes from room to room. You can see her visibly. She doesn't do anything sinister or evil. But it was amazing that night because, we were just down there cleaning, minding our own business. And like I said, when I came downstairs, he was as white as a ghost. And he said, "What do you think this is?" And I said, "I have no idea, but I'm getting some pictures."
Yeah, why not? Let's look at the next one. Oh yeah, that's like a man's footprint.
Well, actually, it was a little small footprint. I got right up close on it.
I see.
Another small footprint.
All right.
Now, there's no real history of anything that's happened in that building that we know of. Nobody's been killed. Nobody's died there. Excuse me. I don't mean to be coughing in your ear. My sinuses are horrible because of the weather change.
Right. You're fine. You're fine. I'm about to start sneezing any minute.
If you need a drink, go ahead and get a drink if you want.
I got coffee.
Okay, good. Yeah, I see it's got a very high instep on this person's foot. And I bet you don't have that high an instep.
No, I don't. I'm actually flat-footed, so no.
Exactly.
And my feet aren't that small, and my Uncle Billy's feet ain't that small either. But this was really small, probably, like I said, a 4 or a 5 maybe in kid size. Wow. But the unique thing about it was it was wet, but it was dry. I have never seen nothing like that. It was just so spectacular. It's just mind-boggling. Wow. And I wouldn't believe it if I didn't get the pictures.
Right.
Well, let's look at another picture. And that looks like a boot or sole or something.
Yeah, that's the bottom of some type of a shoe. It looks like either a dress shoe or a boot, but it looks like a fancy design on the bottom of this shoe print. And those were all around where the little footprints were. They're interchanging in and out of each other, and it was pretty spectacular. It was a pretty exciting experience, to say the least. We didn't hear anything or feel any certain way when we was there that night, but when we experienced this, my uncle said, every time I'm around you and every time we come down here, something like this happens. So I said, well, it just comes with the territory. I'm sorry. But like I said, I wouldn't have believed it unless I seen it for myself and took the picture. So, I've got have the proof. And the proof's there, and I do, I was skeptical when I first seen it, but now I'm not. So, when you see things, you got to believe it.
Notice that Steve makes a good point. Those are 12 by 12 tiles, and so the foot's about half that, so it's like 6 inches. That is a small foot.
Yeah, Steve's pretty sharp. He's a pretty sharp guy. I know
Next
Steve
time
personally.
they want you to put your foot right next to it.
You know what? I will. I'll take my shoe off and I'll put my foot right next to it. My foot would cover that whole tile. I wear a size 12 or 13.
There you go.
So my foot would cover the whole tile.
All right. So
The other one.
Yeah, I got it. What's next is a video. I'm going to set it up. All right. So I went to see Chris Bledsoe and I saw all sorts of orbs and craft and other things. But recently, these flashing and craft that are changing in light and don't have a form, they are all over the United States and the world in the thousands. I can tell people where to go. I'll bring it up later and tell them where to go. But you got a really good one. So let me go over here. Now I'm going to stop this so you can set it up and then we'll play it.
Okay. And I wish I could have zoomed in a little farther, because if you zoom in on it really, really close, you can see what appears to be a wheel inside of a wheel interchanging as it spins through the air. This was taken about probably 3 or 4 nights ago. It was a clear night. And I looked up in the sky and there it was, and that's how it happens with me, like the triangles that I showed you last time and the lights in the sky and the other pictures that I've taken. It's not like that they're hiding. They're right in plain sight where I can see them. And, when I zoomed in on this and looked at it, it reminded me of a picture that my friend Jason McLeod sent to me. And the caption of the picture was the wheel in the middle of the wheel. And I've shared this with Brother Bill Bean, who's a personal friend of mine as well. I send all my videos to him also. And of course, to Mercedes. He's a great man. I send all my videos to Mercedes and Desiree as well, so that they can have a record of it, just in case I get taken away by men in black or get zapped away on some kind of a craft and taken to be the king of some far off planet.
Yeah, we had Mercedes and 2 other ladies on Tuesday night talking about all sorts of good stuff, mostly telepathy tapes and consciousness experiences. But this one is terrific. Let me play this.
Okay.
So the people can see it. I have the volume. I don't know whether there's any volume to it, but here we go.
Wow.
Yeah, the only thing you can hear in the background is my Dodge Ram.
We definitely hear it. We hear it idling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is fascinating. All right, that's the end of it. That is an amazing capture. And the nice thing, I'm gonna do all sorts of photography, and it is resolved. That's the good part. So a lot of the debunkers want to claim if you've got something out of focus and all sorts of other stuff, or you only got a star and it's twinkling, but this is resolved enough. You can tell it's not a star because it's not a point. And the color variations are not like a twinkling star. So that's a great catch, Joshua.
Well, it was there. I put my camera up on my phone, and that's just taken from an iPhone. I mean, if I had a real camera, hard to say what kind of shots I would get, but I'm blind as a bat. And I have a hard time holding still when I'm videotaping or recording things or taking pictures, because it's hard to adjust and to see. And one of these days, I'm gonna have my engineer over here go through all my pictures and stuff and try to make them more easily viewable.
Yeah. Put them in some kind of album where people can look at them in public. Right. So, what do you tell me? What your heart and through prayer or whatever you think is going on with those things in your area.
Well, to be honest with you, excuse me, I think that what I saw and what I videotaped the other night was the wheel in the middle of the wheel. Kind of like the divine vision that Ezekiel saw in Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 1 through 21. Now, that's not a divine vision that I took a recording of. That's an actual craft. Right. It's actually visible, and it's literally there. Is it a UFO? Is it a tangible, is it an angelic entity? We don't know. But, as I was thinking about this video, and we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday night, I was on Mercedes' show. My mind automatically went after prayer to Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 1 through 21. And, talking about that mystical and overwhelming imagery that Ezekiel saw, and always you have to ask questions. Well, what did Ezekiel say? Was it purely symbolic or was it something literal? And then you have to ask the question, is there a connection between the vision and other biblical encounters with celestial or supernatural beings? And then you have to come to this realization or this question: could this be a description of UFOs, extraterrestrial technology, or an angelic demonic manifestation? Now, I like to say that there's three primary interpretations of Ezekiel's vision. Number one, it was a supernatural vision of God's glory. That's the traditional theological perspective. That's what we're taught in Bible college. Number two, it could have been a UFO encounter or an interaction with advanced non-human intelligence. Or number three, a manifestation of angelic or demonic beings, possibly connected to end times and even end times deception. Now, I believe that what Ezekiel saw was not only a vision from God, but I believe that wheel in the middle of the wheel, if you read that chapter, the throne of God was on that craft. When it came down out of heaven, God was traveling in this craft within this wheel in the middle of the wheel. Now, people that may not know much about Ezekiel, I'll give you a little bit of a background about Ezekiel. He was a priest in Israel that was taken into Babylonian captivity right around, I think, 597 BC. And his vision occurs by the river Chebar, which is a location that was associated with captivity and lament. And, this moment of revelation mirrors other prophetic visions of God's throne. You can look at Isaiah chapter 6 with, when Isaiah saw the Lord lifted high and mighty in the air and his train filled the temple when King Uzziah died. Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 4 all mirror this prophetic vision. Now, I would like to get the opportunity to be able to zoom in all the way up to this craft as other people have. They've actually caught the wheels in the middle of the wheel interchanging and working within themselves. They've actually got it so clear. As I said, Jason McLeod sent me a picture, and that has to be exactly what I seen in the sky. And Ezekiel describes those wheels within the wheels that move without turning. But Ezekiel said that when he looked, they were full of eyes. That's Ezekiel 1:16 through 18. And you have to understand the Hebrew words, because when you understand the Hebrew word meanings, it sheds more light. Now, that word wheel is the Hebrew word ophan, which is used in biblical context for something circular, often associated with divine mobility. You can look up as a reference Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. Now, that word middle, the wheel in the middle of the wheel, the word middle is the Hebrew word tavech, which means within or among or interwoven, implying a complex layered structure. And that word eyes is the Hebrew word ayin, which could refer to actual eyes. And check this out. It could also refer to intelligence, awareness, or glowing reflective lights.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
When I read that, I almost jumped out of my chair when I would begin to research the Hebrew word meanings of this particular passage of scripture.
Wow.
I
And
keep telling people it's important not to just pick up an English translation of whatever the scripture used to be and assume the words are immediately understandable to you without understanding the context. And I'll give you an example that a lot of people will identify with. In the early part of Jesus' ministry, he went to Peter's home, and there was somebody there who needed a healing. And he went inside, and there was no swinging of incense or any incantations or any weirdness or other stuff that a first century rabbi would have done. It was get up and walk. with the energy and command of the Father coming out of his mouth. And if you pay attention to what the language means as if you were in that time, you get a lot more out of the Bible than you do reading the King James or New International Version, because you got to understand the context in which these things happen. And that was an unbelievable miracle, because it didn't have all the Jewish mumbo jumbo incantations that would have gone with an attempted healing. It's really important, isn't it, Josh?
It is. And, I love that particular story because there were so many people in the house that they actually tore the roof off and lowered him down through the roof so that he could get healed. So, I mean, that was spectacular as well.
And it showed the humbleness of Jesus in that he didn't have to have any big ceremony or any prompts or anything. He was just a person visiting a home and let them come in and get help. And it was no big, long ceremony making himself look grandiose. It was get up and go.
Absolutely.
Pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And that's what faith, faith is. It's the belief that God's able to do it, and the belief that God does answer prayer and that God does work, even outside of our little rituals and outside of the things that we do. A lot of that's just smoke and mirrors. A lot of that just makes us feel good about our particular way of doing things. But I've seen God move. A friend of mine passed away. He pastored an Assemblies of God church, and my youngest son was sick with seizures, and he was real bad off. They had to life flight him several times to the hospital, my son. And it was a terrible time for our family. It was a time that I went through terrible depression, a PTSD. And for 2 years, a lot of people don't know this, but for 2 years, I was suicidal. Every day planned on how I was going to end my life if something happened to my son. And that's crazy because I was preaching all over the United States. And, it was hard to find peace, but we were standing in that waiting room, and the Spirit of God came down and brought peace. But I'll never forget, we brought Elijah home from Lexington. He was sick, and Pastor Shields, it was real late at night. We wasn't expecting him, and I heard a knock at the door. And we opened the door, and he said, "I've come here to anoint Elijah with oil and pray the prayer of faith that God will heal him." And Brother Shields came in and laid hands on him, and it was just a matter of time, and God just completely healed Elijah. And he's seizure free today. Praise God. He'll be 17 years old in April. And that man of God got to go to heaven. So I thank God that, God moves unconventionally. He'll move wherever there's faith. If you won't let him move in your church, he'll go down the street where the local bar is, or he'll go down to the local crack house, or he'll go down to where the prostitutes are gathered, where people's hearts are open for him. God, and I've always said this, and the late H. Richard Hall used to say this, God likes to move through sticks and stones and dead men's bones. And he'll move wherever there's faith.
It's true.
It is true.
Well, and of course, throughout the Bible, you can really find out by reading the stories who is faithful. They're the ones that God is not going to be easy to. Almost surely they're going to be persecuted, and almost surely they meet an early and unhappy end.
That's true.
But they're faithful enough to stick to it. And those are important stories, and you have to understand the entire context if you actually want the message.
That's right. That's right. And Mercedes, I love you too, dear. She posted on there she loved me, so I want to
Oh,
give her a shout out.
we love Mercedes. She is a hoot.
She's
We have a
something
good
else.
time with her.
She's amazing. And you know, kind of back to what we was discussing about the wheel in the middle of the wheel. You know, those four living creatures, the cherubim that had four faces. You know, the face of a man, lion, ox, and an eagle.
Yeah.
And those are symbolic over God's sovereignty of God over His creation. And the Bible said that they moved within the wheels and that their spirit was in the wheels. Now, that kind of reminds me of what we call advanced alien technology. There was like a direct link between the living beings and the mobility of the wheels. And through various studies of various crafts and things that have happened through crafts crashing and reverse engineering, we have been able to prove that there's some kind of a connection to the beings that drive these crafts, some kind of a metaphysical connection that when they put their hands on these control devices, that they can control the craft with their mind. So, you know, and there's several interpretations of what the wheels represent. Theologically, we know that the wheels represent divine presence, but they signify God's omnipresence and His ability to move anywhere instantly. And, you know, similar to God's throne in Daniel chapter 7, verse 9, it says His throne was like a fiery flame and His wheels as burning fire.
Right.
So even in Daniel's vision, he saw something similar to what Ezekiel saw.
Right.
Now, you know, what I call the UFO hypothesis, is it a technological vehicle? Well, the eyes could be lights or sensors, right? I mean, and the wheels movements resemble a hovering, rotating craft with anti-gravity properties. And the spirit in the wheels could mean the craft, like I said, was controlled by consciousness. Now, the question of the ages is it angelic or is it demonic? Is it some type of a distraction? Is it something that's trying to, is it some kind of a worldwide distraction maybe created by governments to keep our attention focused on what these crafts may be and focused on the skies and not really focused on what's going on here on planet Earth?
Well, we know there's a distraction because at the end of the Biden administration, they came out and totally contradicted everything they had said in the month before about what all these weird things were over New Jersey, et cetera, totally ignoring the hundreds and thousands that are not being covered by small television stations all over the country and the world. I mean, you know, they're definitely not telling us the truth. And now you and Lala has a video that looks just like that thing. It sits there and it's doing this flash and this other stuff. And our night vision camera.
That was in daylight.
Yeah, the daylight. But I'm talking about night vision ones. The night vision ones, we cannot see color because they go to infrared mode at nighttime so they can see. So we can, but it's that pattern of light variation. And it's just happening all over the place. And if you're not getting some kind of message you believe, you're correct. One must determine through prayer or whatever how to interpret it, but don't jump in based on your bias or your hope. Wait until you get more answers, because as you know from many, many stories, and we have friends who have experienced a lot, it is not necessarily an angel or from the Lord. It can be something really ugly.
That's true.
So be careful, people. Be careful.
That's true. And, you know, I know what Ezekiel saw, that was cherubs, and the cherubim were actually directly connected to the wheels, suggesting a spiritual entity rather than machinery. You ever thought about that? You ever see these crafts in the sky that look like living creatures? That's not necessarily anything that result, you know, in any way, shape, or form looks like a machine.
she calls napkin, and it's
Football.
the football, and they have moving parts, and they are no animal you've ever seen on earth. And then I might show one later where it was this glowing being about, let's call it 2 meters long and 2 yards long and a few inches high, and it had notches in it, and it was flying in the sky over our truck while we were sitting in a field, and no idea where they came from, except she called back home on our speakers inside and outside the house and told them to come where we were, and that was one of the things that showed up. You guys keep talking while I bring it up and show it.
Okay. I've never had any kind of communication with any of these people that are driving these crafts or anything like that, but they make it apparent that they let me, and I've got several pictures I need to send you all that I took several years ago of these crafts, but they're green, and you can actually, when you zoom in, you can see the windows.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty
oh
fascinating.
yeah, that would be a good one.
I'll have to send those to you. They're very, very unique.
Yeah, so I would say something similar to that we saw was let me add that. Okay, I'm going to stop that presentation and add this other so you can see it. Anyway, so we saw something like that. There we go. Okay, so there they are. There's 4 or 5 of them, and she has her head out the window, taking a picture with her iPhone, and I'm looking at them through the windshield. And who knows what these energy ribbons are? They certainly didn't communicate with us.
No, they listen. They're intelligent.
I didn't say they weren't, but they're not talking to us. They're just showing up for us, these ones. And you can see it's still light. You can see the trees. All of it's in color. This is not night vision. And that's about a mile from our house in a big field. Just amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
Very. And it's not Starlink. It's not anything. Because everybody always laughs. Oh, you got a picture of. I'm like, I know.
Oh, well, I was going to say like. That's below the top of the trees.
Yeah.
Hang on. That's below the top of the trees right there, and it flew right over the top of the truck.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome.
I do think that they can shift and morph into different shapes. And I think that they are cautious of how they appear to us. I think, you know what I mean? So whatever they think will be less threatening, they show up as. Now, I always ask them, I always say beings of love, or because I don't know what their name is, but I make sure they're positive. I always say, can I, if I'm down one day or sad, I'm like, can you, entertain me? I say it in a nicer way, and they'll do something cool that for me that night or the next night. So I know they can hear us, and they listen to our hearts, so that's why I think they're positive beings. Of course, we know there's negative beings. You work with them, you help people with that too, but these particular I think are good as far as I know.
So the thing we saw in our backyard looked like an orb, except it went down like this, up, zigzagged, and then shot off to the top. And throughout that tube of light, we could see non-human faces.
Wow.
Like alien grays. That was an amazing photo. So we would have to put all this stuff up one day and have a deal with it. We'll have some fun with this.
Before you get these certain photos, the ones with the windows or the ones recent you showed us, do you get feelings to take a picture, or do you get a feeling before you see them? How's that work?
Both. I get a feeling before I see them, and then I get a feeling to take a picture. So it's exactly what it is. Almost like there's some kind of a communication. Like, hey, I'm up here. Just like when I first time ever saw Sasquatch. It was kind of, I could hear the footsteps, and I heard the rustling of the brush, and it was kind of like, hey, here I am, look at me. and I didn't feel no negativity. I didn't feel like I was a threat, being
Well,
threatened.
you didn't bring any negativity to it.
No, and it was absolutely beautiful. The white hair around his face and the brownish white. He had white interwoven in his brown hair, and he was just beautiful. He was probably about 9 foot tall. I'd say
Oh,
probably weighed over 1,000 pounds.
wow.
But he was beautiful. I could take you right to the location where I seen him to this day. And I know they're still out there. Um,
Oh, I want to hear all about this. This is interesting.
Yeah.
When did this happen?
This happened about the first time I ever seen a Sasquatch was about 1999, I believe. So that's
You've
the
seen
first
more than
time.
once?
Oh, I've seen them a lot. Yeah, I've seen them with my oldest son. I've seen them with my grandmother on an old gravel road we used to travel a lot. There was a ditch line that was about 6.5 foot deep, and we were driving, and there was these two glowing red lights looking at us. And the chest of this creature, I was in an SUV. It was standing in a 6.5 foot deep ravine or a ditch line, and its chest was up to the SUV.
Wow.
Oh my
So this creature was huge, and he ducked down in the ditch line as we drove by, and we looked and tried to find him, but somehow he was gone. He wasn't even down in the ditch line. He had like disappeared.
Right.
I don't know if he had morphed or if he had some kind of cloaking device on him or if he was just had crawled on his belly and got out of Dodge. I don't know exactly what happened,
Right.
but it was pretty fascinating. And I've seen him multiple times. I've had him holler at me. I've been, I don't know, how close do you think we was to them, Elijah, when we lived out in the country? We could hear that Bigfoot walking across the little, probably about 10 foot away. And you could hear it breathing, and he was walking back and forth. That one, he never came out, but there was about 10 or 11 of us standing out there, and you could actually hear him breathing and hear him walking and that. But that same creature, my oldest boy and I, and of course I don't have the flip phone anymore. It's back when we had flip phones. That tells you how long ago that was. He said, "Hey Dad, is that a monkey?" And I looked up and I said, "No, that's a Bigfoot. That's a Sasquatch." He was sitting down on his behind, was back up against a tree, and he's seen us. And it couldn't have been a human. Human beings have to grab onto something to pull themselves up. This thing was so powerful, it just stood straight up without any effort whatsoever. Just stood straight up on its legs and took off walking.
Oh my.
Yeah. So the closest I came to an encounter was I was in Sedona, Arizona, and I was visiting with my friend Melinda Leslie, and she took me out to Bradshaw Ranch, and which is full of weirdness. Anyway, so we're walking around, looking around, and I head over to the stables. And while I'm walking out there, I see this gigantic footprint, and there was a bunch of them in a line. But Bishop, here's the weird part. It was only the right side footprints. Like the left side was through the portal and the right side was on our side, and he was walking down the edge of the portal. I mean, that was wild. And then I looked up because I had a feeling to look up and saw a shadow being in a little building through an open window in a building right down at the edge of the property. Needless to say, I didn't go near that building. And this one over here got a shadow being on a house across our backyard, and it was really strange. So this shadow is standing there when the thing starts,
like 2 or 3 in the morning.
2 or 3 in the morning, and it's right next to a light, but shadow on the wall. Sorry, shadows don't work like that. It had sharp edges, like it was cut out of construction paper, even right next to that light. And then it slides down the wall and folds around the corner and disappears.
And a light appears
Wow.
on the house, and when the light appears on the side of the house, the dude is gone.
Please don't forget to send him that video.
I watched this, and you could see like a little bit of shadow, but then after that, nothing. Because I zoomed in on this just to make sure. I don't know what it is, but I don't know.
Well, our neighbors across the backyard, they get visited by something that interacts with them from above almost every night.
The more I took a break for a year.
Yeah, we took a break. We took a break.
Because I got too obsessed with it. And it was exciting. And so I got back into it. And like I said before, I'll flash a big bright camera flash at them 3 times, like every other day. And that's when the roof lights up. I swear, it's so amazing. So I don't know. It's cool. I don't know 100%. I don't want to say like this is what it is, but it's definitely cool. It's interesting.
We get a lot of stuff. We go, well, I know this is anomalous. I know it's weird, but I'm not about to say what it is. We'll just put it out there and let people guess. Our favorite was she was looking at this video and something comes through the garage wall, out, turns in a right bank, goes out, banks around again, across in front of the garage. Now, people said, oh, that's a spider on a leaf or whatever. That night, there were gale force winds. And for that to be true, it flew into 45-mile-per-hour winds, which was blowing the opposite way it was going. You just let it go and don't let people bother you.
Yeah, you can't.
They don't want to know
about it. That's true. They don't.
They don't want to know.
So many people aren't open-minded, and that's why so many people don't see anything like Bigfoot or UFOs or anything like that, because they don't believe. There's a lot of people sitting in churches all across the world that don't believe that God's able to heal. And that's why people are sick in their church meetings and they don't see any miracles take place. If you cause yourself to believe something so strong, then you won't see the things that are really true. I was preaching a revival in Petersburg, West Virginia, which is right on the Virginia border. We're in southwestern West Virginia. And a friend of mine and I went up on a mountain to pray. It was about 5,000 feet in the air. And as we walked up this mountain, we got up probably about 3,000 feet, and we began to notice rock formations that had been stacked on top of each other at these little different various outlets to these different trails. So we go up to the top of the mountain. It was so powerful. You could hear the voice of God in the wind. You could hear the voice of God in the wind. And he and I heard exactly what God was speaking at the same time. Well, guess what else we heard? We heard Sasquatch vocalizations, and they threw rocks at us while we was up there praying.
Well, you're on the West Virginia border. You're where people go out in the woods. They got a big old gun with them, and they shoot at whatever they don't know about. So yeah. I understand them being a little bit upset.
Yeah, and I would never ever shoot until you've looked in the face of one. They're more human than they are animal. There's no way that I could ever raise a weapon. The only way that I could do that is if my life depended on it. But listen, I ain't got nothing big enough in my house to stop something that's 13 foot tall, weighs over 1,200 pounds.
Exactly. You're gonna make it angry, not hurt it.
They would have done something already if that was their intent.
I think. Yeah. I've never ever been afraid. I would take my kids out and set them right down where they're at. I don't believe they would hurt us in any way, shape, or form. I believe that they're cautious of us because they know what man does. Everywhere man goes, he brings destruction and death with him.
Everywhere.
But, I believe that they're just as curious about us. I was joking with my son one time, and I said, a juvenile Bigfoot sees you walking in the woods. He goes home and says, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, guess what? I saw a human.
I've had a few alien cartoons that were like that I thought were funny. So I was going to say my one experience of I was sure he was talking to me. So I had an intelligence operation that I was doing in and around Israel. It was not fun. It was kind of rough. So I decided to go do kind of a religious trek, and I walked out the East Gate of Jerusalem over to the Garden of Gethsemane, got a ride up to the Church of the Nativity. Yeah, I was going to say it again. Yeah. Did I tell this to you?
Yes, you did.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. And then back down and went into the East Gate of Jerusalem and wandered around and found myself in front of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Went inside and heard this gigantic wind with about a bunch of other people where we were looking at tombs in this cavern below. And it was an amazing experience because we all sang in tune and on the same time in about 5 or 6 different languages, Rock of Ages.
Awesome.
It was amazing. Have you or Brother Bean, was it you or Brother Bean that saw a reptilian?
Actually, it was my wife's grandmother.
Wow.
My wife's grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and they were in Gallipolis, Ohio, which is right across the river from Point Pleasant, where the Mothman was, where the bridge fell. And they've got a piece of the actual bridge there at this rest area on Route 7 in Gallipolis, or for the out-of-towners, they call it Gallipolis, but it's actually pronounced Gallipolis. That is the actual way to pronounce that. She went to the restroom. She had to stop. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And Granny, her Indian name's Little Deer, but Granny wasn't afraid of anything. I mean, Granny was kind of woman, if she felt threatened, she'd punch you just like a man. I mean, she used her fist just like a man. She was as mean as a striped snake and rough as a corn cob. That's how she was raised. But she was in the restroom and she heard someone come in, and that's not anything extraordinary to hear somebody come to the bathroom at 2 or 3 in the morning. Well, she finished and she walked out to go wash her hands, and she said, "There's standing this 6 foot tall reptilian person, a full reptilian." And she said at first she was, she's shocked. She's like, what am I seeing? She said she rubbed her eyes. She said, this has to be a joke. This is a trick. Well, she got her bearings about herself and realized that this thing was standing between her and the door.
Oh.
So rather than washing her hands, she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ, and I command you to get out of my way. And when she said that, she pushed it, and it moved out of her way, and she went out and got in the car, and they got the heck out of there. But she told us that story.
Wow.
And the way she told it, here's the thing that always leads me to believe people when they tell stories. When a person tells it with such passion and with such I don't know what word I'm looking for, with a passion and with the truth. I mean, you can tell when something's true, when something's fabricated.
Right.
And when they speak it from their heart, that's the main thing.
Right.
And they really witnessed this, and they really seen these things. You can't discredit it. I mean, you can't say, well, I don't believe it happened because I didn't see it. Well, that don't mean nothing.
Right.
I don't see the wind, but I see the effects of the wind. I know it's real. It exists.
Right.
I don't see my heart or my brain, but I know they're there because the brain causes my heart to pump, the blood pumps through my body, and I'm alive.
Right.
I know they're there. But just because you don't see something doesn't mean it's not real or that it's not there.
Right.
I believe Bigfoot's around us all the time. There's spirits around us all the time. There's been multiple times here at this house where, we've had all the lights out and we've been going through something spiritually, and you can see the angel of the Lord floating through the house. You can see the light as it goes through the house. And one night they were making so much noise, you could hear their footprints. And my wife was like, God, please let them be quiet so they don't wake our kids up. And then I've seen demons in the house. I've seen a wall of demons one night coming toward me like they were going to fall on me. I mean, there was hundreds of them that made up this wall, like a living wall. And I rebuked them, and they turned and went the opposite direction, right through the wall and out of the house.
Good.
So I've seen all kinds of things, here in this house. But I've seen all kinds of things in nature, in the woods, and there's all kinds of stories that have been handed down through the Cherokee, my Cherokee ancestry. My grandfather was Chief Sizemore, chief of the Cherokee Nation.
Wow.
And there's been all kinds of stories handed down throughout the years about the little people in the woods, and of course Sasquatch, and about so many different other various, there was a story handed down by my great-great-grandfather. He said he saw a dragon in the woods. Now, I don't know if he was talking about his uncle dragging canoe, because they called him the dragon, or if he really saw a dragon, because there's people that have captured it on video, right? I mean, there's dragons.
Here's my favorite orb picture while we were sitting in that truck out in the field. So
wow.
Oh yeah. So let me expand this a little bit because I can. There we go.
Oh wow.
All right. So I did not see this, and neither did she. But the entire ground all around the truck lit up. and I grabbed my phone and shoved it out the window and pointed it up and went click. And there was this thing and that thing. Oh, sorry. This thing and that thing. I have no clue what those are, but I'm going to tell you what, we were just a wee bit excited.
That's a wonderful picture.
Isn't it great? I mean, look, the sky's still light. You can see the trees, and this lit up the ground like it was the sun.
Wow.
It was amazing. This is a few seconds after she called over to our house, talked on the microphones to our external camera and said, hey, we're over here in the field. Come on over. And this showed up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that is amazing.
People can talk to them.
Somebody has a question real quick.
Do you think there is a rise in the rate of paranormal activity?
Oh, absolutely. It's because people have become more aware of it.
Exactly. They're not in denial as much anymore. There are a lot of still in doubt, but they're not in denial. So I think more people believe it, that somebody has had some kind of experience. They may not interpret the same way as others, but they're aware of it, especially after they hear the description of it, how it went, and so forth. When something begins to happen, they recognize that, and boom, they are down the rabbit hole.
Right. Well, I think there's a rise in it because it's not taboo to talk about anymore.
Me too.
Right.
You know, everybody's talking about it, and you know, it's and I think that there's a rise in paranormal because a lot of people are and I've met a lot of people in my travels that, you know, we call it demonic obsession or demonomania. There's a lot of people that's obsessed with the darkness. You know, there's a lot of people that are deceived. And I'm not talking about in the paranormal field that people do the research, but there are people that are deceived into believing that these malevolent spirits are somehow benevolent, and somehow they're to help or assist these people. And, you know, I've met people that are perfectly possessed. A person that's perfectly possessed is okay with selling their soul out to the evil one, so that they can get money and wealth and fame and cars and women and all those things. And I've met people like that, but there's an obsession, you know,
Right.
and I believe that that's why more people are starting to see things. It's not that just normal people are obsessed, but people that have obsessions are making all this information more readily available through the internet, through podcasts, through TV shows, through
Right.
TV series. And it's causing people to start to investigate that bump in the night. What was that noise I heard? Who was that touched my camper? What's that outside of my tent? Is it a grizzly bear or is it a Sasquatch? Is that light that I see in the sky a UFO or is it an airplane? So you've got more people more aware of what's going on around them, and they're actually starting to look, you know,
Right.
to see what it is that's going on because we're interested. We want to know. And, you know, we've been lied to so many years by our government, by our media, that all these things don't exist. But movie makers have made movies for years trying to give us bits and pieces of the truth, but we've just laughed it off. Oh, yeah, anybody that believes in that's crazy. Anybody that believes in
Right.
UFOs and aliens or Bigfoot or the Dog Man or Chupacabra or Mothman, you're just crazy to believe that. Well, what about the millions of people that have seen and
Right.
witnessed? How can you laugh that off? That's not mass hysteria. You can't have 1 million people imagining the same thing at once. I've never heard of that ever happening. And then
Right.
people say, oh, it's Project Blue Book or it's Project Blue Beam or Project whatever different projects they talk about. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that.
We're coming up on the anniversary of the Phoenix Lights, and we had Dr. Lynn Katai on, and it's kind of hard to see how, you know, between 10 and 50,000 people hallucinated the same thing. And it was supposed to be flares, except it was seen over 3 states for hundreds of miles. I mean, come on. How dense do you have to be to buy the lies?
You know, it just blows my mind that people are so close-minded. They don't want to know the truth.
I have a question real quick. Do you think that people talk about the veils lifting or realms, or we're kind of mixing with different realms? Do you think maybe that's also why we're seeing more cryptids and spirits? Do you think that happens?
excuse me, I do believe that it does. I believe that the reason why we're starting to see these things is because I believe, because the Bible says in Revelation, it talks about the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, out of heaven from God, and it actually coming to this earth.
Mhm.
And I believe that as the veil thins, as God comes to set up his kingdom and his throne right here on planet earth, I believe that the veil is going to get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and we're going to see more things. Jesus said there'd be signs in the heavens above and in the earth beneath. So I believe that this is part of what he was talking about. The
Mhm.
signs in the heavens above. He said that there would be great earthquakes. He said the stars would fall from heaven. The heavens would be shaken. What are the stars he was talking about? It's not the
Right.
stars that we see that twinkle. The stars always represented angels, spirit beings. There's
Mhm.
going to be a shaking of the heavens. God's going to shake and reveal all these things that have been hidden, not just by man, but hidden to a time appointed for the end, just like Daniel said. And I believe that we're living in that time that's appointed to the end. And I believe that's why we're seeing all these things.
Mhm.
That's the only explanation that I can come up with, the only valid one. I believe that God's pulling back the veil, and God's allowing us to see these things to show us, hey, we're not alone, or B, we're not as spiritual as we thought we were,
Mhm.
because we presuppose all these things. We have our own ideas about things, but
Right.
I believe that this is God peeling the onion apart so that we can see all the inner workings of everything that goes on in the universe.
Right. I
Yeah,
agree.
when people are willing to make really dumb deals and do really dumb things, I want them to sit with me in a dark closet until they beg to go out of the closet. We're just going to sit there quiet until they beg to come out of the closet. And I says, look, right now, if you said, I believe and please forgive me, I believe and please forgive me, you're not going to have to sit in a closet in the dark for a little while till you can't stand it. You can choose between everlasting life in joy or forever in that closet and worse.
That's right.
I mean, there's a choice and it's simple.
It
It
is.
is not hard. It is simple. Ask
Absolutely.
for forgiveness and believe. How hard can God's grace be before people will have to say, that's too hard? No, it's too easy, and the people are just not willing to listen.
That's true. Well, there's so many people like my youngest son. He went to school with a young man who was 18 years old at the time, and he said that he didn't know who Jesus was. He'd never heard of him, had no idea who he was.
Hmm.
We're living in a society where this generation today has no need for God.
Yeah.
They have no need for anything spiritual or supernatural, but all that's fixing to change, I believe. I believe that people are going to, there was something that happened in the biblical days before the flood that caused men on the earth to call on the name of the Lord. And I believe that that's a time when God came down and the angels came down. I believe that it was God that built the pyramid of Gaza, or Giza, however you say it, that great pyramid. I believe it was God that constructed and built that. And the angels built the other ones beside it. It used to light up and it used to reflect all across the desert. It was a highway signal, a travel point that people used
Ah.
to travel at night. And, there's no way human beings could have built that, whether it be the angels or the fallen angels that built after the fact. There's
Yeah.
no way human beings could have built that. Just like the Tower of Babel, that construction that took place, the angels helped them build that. The angels, the fallen angels taught them war. The fallen angels taught them, that there's nothing that you can do. You can become gods. You are gods. You can take over the world. You can take over the heavens and the earth. And that's why God separated mankind, because even God said, there's nothing that they can't do. They're unstoppable.
Mhm. Yep.
So, I think we live in a day and time where you look at medical science. I mean, the other day, a lady that works with me, her brother had a heart transplant. In a week, he was home. He was up walking 2 or 3 days later.
Wow.
25 years ago, you had to spend 6 months in the hospital.
Right.
Right.
Not no more.
Joshua, tell our audience what you got coming up soon.
Well, every Saturday you can always see me on the Unseen Realm with our host, Archbishop Ronald Enright. Of course, I do various programs, such as your wonderful program here at Orbis Paranormal, and I'm a regular guest on the Mercedes Lucky Benedict show. And I've got several other programs that I'm going to be on in the near future, which are tentative. They're not scheduled yet. But I'm actually going to be doing some evangelistic work. I am no longer pastoring. We are not at the church anymore, so we've been freed up to be able to travel and to go do some evangelistic work. Now, one of the biggest events is in May. We're having what's called an enthronement ceremony, and that's just a big word for all the bishops. The bishops are coming down. They're going to give me certificates because I'm taking over as the presiding bishop of an organization of a church body, United Evangelical Episcopal Church. But I'm writing a book. I had a man of God reach out to me, and God spoke this very word to him. He said, "It's your time to rest. Your time to write your books." And to get things in order, because there's a lot of things that's coming up. And, in October, I believe we're going to be doing the Defeating the Demonic again in Connecticut. So there's all kinds of different things coming up, but I'm open to anything, to be guest on any shows, any podcasts. The Lord spoke to me at the beginning of last year to prepare myself, because I'm going to be on podcasts and TV programs, and I'm going to be out there talking. And, there's a chance that I may start explaining the unexplainable once again. It's a podcast we used to have back years ago on not a podcast. You all remember Pal Talk?
I do.
I was on Pal Talk, and we actually got on there. We used to have hundreds of people come, and we talked about UFOs, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Mothman, things that go bump in the night. So there's a chance that I may start a show and do that now that I've got some free time. We're open to do interviews, open to do guest appearances, open to come and do speaking engagements, not just church speaking engagements, but to talk about Bigfoot and UFOs, and to present our evidence that we have to people who have honest hearts and open minds.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got a home here. She will invite you to come back soon. We're pretty busy into May, but right after that, she'll find a place for you, because there's a lot that needs to be said.
Yeah, I think you are. Obviously, you have great energy, easy to talk to, and you're very smart. You have a good heart. You're spiritual, and you're into all the different things. And so anybody could come and talk to you, literally, and that's important.
I wish everyone had a pastor that spoke like you do,
for real,
and left a little bit of the hellfire and brimstone off, so the fear leaves, right, and the joy of the other way is shown. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Bishop Joshua Sparks. You're a superstar in our eyes, and we're very happy you're here. And thank you, everyone for watching. And look, go by and see other things he's doing. And we have more shows next week, and hope you will join us. Good night.
Good night.